The deepest scars aren't on the skin, but on the heart that trusted too much. We bring you the intense narratives of broken promises and the long, cold road to finding justice for oneself. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for these powerful human dramas. I was sitting behind a desk the size of a dining table when my phone buzzed with a message that made my hands go still. My name is Margaret Collins, and for 19 years, my only daughter believed I had stolen everything from her. The message was an invitation, gold letters on a white card, digital but dressed up to look expensive. My daughter was throwing herself a gala, a celebration of her new company, her new life, her new everything. And at the very bottom, in her handwriting I would recognize anywhere, she had typed, "Come if you dare, mother. Everyone will finally see you for what you really are." I set the phone face down on the desk and looked out the window at the Nashville skyline. The sun was just beginning to drop behind the buildings. Somewhere out there, a 63-year-old woman was supposed to be broken, supposed to be invisible, supposed to have nothing left. I smiled and picked the phone back up. Let me tell you how I got here. I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, the eldest of 4 children. My mother worked the early shift at a laundry facility, and my father drove delivery trucks 6 days a week. We were not rich, but we understood the value of things of work, of loyalty, of keeping your word even when it cost you something. Those lessons were stitched into me so deep I carried them the way other people carry bone. I met my husband Raymond when I was 24. He was charming the way a river is charming, beautiful to look at, strong when it moved in your direction, and quietly dangerous when it turned. I did not see the danger part for a long time. What I saw was a man who laughed easily, who held my hand in public, who told me I was the smartest woman he had ever met. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. That is the first thing I would tell any young woman today. Wanting something to be true is not the same as it being true. We had our daughter Renee, 3 years into the marriage. She had Raymond's eyes and my stubbornness, and from the first moment I held her, I understood what people meant when they said they would burn the world down for someone. I would have done anything. What I did not know was that Raymond had a sister named Claudette, who had decided, long before she ever met me, that no woman would ever be good enough for her brother. Claudette was 4 years older than Raymond, never married, and had appointed herself the keeper of their family's legacy. She lived 15 minutes from us. She was over at our house 3 times a week. She had a key. For the first few years, I told myself it was just family closeness. Southern families are tight, I said. Give it time, I said. She will warm up to you eventually, I said. But Claudette was not cold because she was reserved. She was cold because she was calculating. Every smile she gave me had arithmetic behind it. When Renee turned 5, Raymond's parents passed within 8 months of each other, and they left behind a modest estate, a house in Chattanooga, a savings account, and a small parcel of land outside the city. Raymond was the sole heir. Claudette received nothing. And something in her shifted permanently after that. I watched it happen. I watched a woman who had merely disliked me become a woman who had decided to destroy me. I did not act fast enough on what I was watching. The accusations started small. A bracelet of Raymond's mother missing after I had visited the house with him to sort through belongings. Claudette mentioned it to Raymond quietly, tenderly. The way you deliver news you wish you did not have to deliver. Raymond told me about it almost apologetically. I was stunned. I told him I had not touched anything that was not mine. He said, "Of course." Of course. He believed me, but the seed was planted. Over the next 2 years, Claudette built her case the way a careful woman builds anything slowly, with patience, making sure each piece was in place before adding the next. A check from Raymond's business account that appeared to have my signature, bank statements printed and annotated in a hand that was not mine but was close enough to make Raymond's jaw tighten when he looked at them, an email from an account that had my name in it, written to a man I had never heard of, discussing money that I had supposedly moved. None of it was real. All of it looked real. Raymond filed for divorce in February. 2 weeks later, before I had even processed what was happening to my marriage, 2 investigators from the Chattanooga Financial Crimes Unit were sitting in my living room. They were polite. They were thorough. They told me I had the right to remain silent, and then they told me what I was being charged with: fraud, forgery, theft of marital assets totaling over $240,000. I remember the floor feeling like it was breathing under my feet. I screamed that I was innocent. I said it standing up. I said it sitting back down. I said it while they read me my rights in a voice that had no particular cruelty in it but no belief either. Renee was 12 years old. She was at school. I kept thinking, someone needs to pick her up at 3:15. Someone needs to be there when the bell rings. That was what my mind kept circling back to in the worst moment of my life, my daughter standing on a sidewalk waiting for a mother who was not coming. Raymond picked her up. Claudette was with him. I hired the best attorney I could find with the savings I had access to, which was not much because Raymond had moved quickly on the accounts. The trial lasted 4 days. Claudette testified for 2 hours. She cried twice, beautifully, at the exact right moments. My attorney was good, but Claudette was better. She had been preparing for this performance for years while I had been busy trusting people and raising a daughter and believing that innocence was its own protection. It is not. The jury deliberated for 1 day. Guilty on 3 counts. I was sentenced to 26 months. I want to tell you what prison is like, but I have learned that most people cannot actually hold it. What I will tell you is this. The worst part was not the small space, or the noise, or the food that tasted like nothing had ever been alive. The worst part was a single phone call 6 months into my sentence, when Renee told me, in a voice as flat and distant as a recording, that she did not want me to call anymore, that Raymond had shown her things, that Claudette had explained everything, that she needed to focus on healing, and I was not part of that. She was 13 years old. I held the receiver for a long time after she hung up. The woman in line behind me did not rush me. Maybe she recognized what she was looking at. I served 19 months. I was released on a Tuesday in March, and I walked out of that facility with $40 in gate money, a garbage bag of belongings, and a felony conviction that would follow me like a second shadow for the rest of my life. I was 51 years old. I had no home because Raymond had sold the house during the divorce. I had no savings. I had a daughter who believed I was a criminal. I had a cousin in Nashville named Bet, who let me sleep on her pull-out couch for 3 months without asking anything from me except that I eat dinner with her on Sundays. Bet was the first grace I received, and I have never forgotten it. The job search was humiliating in a way I was not prepared for, even after everything I had already survived. I had a business degree. I had 15 years of experience in financial administration before the charges. I was organized, precise, reliable, and I tested well on every skills assessment they put in front of me. But at the bottom of every application was that box, the felony box, and I checked it honestly every time, because I am not built to lie. And every time I checked it, something in the interviewer's face changed. Not cruelty, usually, just a door closing quietly. I applied for 41 jobs in 4 months. A woman named Ruth at a small nonprofit accounting office in East Nashville gave me the 42nd interview. She was 60 herself, had reading glasses on a beaded chain, and she looked at my application for a long time before she looked at me. "Tell me exactly what happened," she said. I told her exactly what happened, all of it. I did not soften it or frame it carefully or try to make myself sound more sympathetic. I just told the truth in the order it occurred. She was quiet for a moment. "I believe you," she said. "I don't know if that matters to you at this point." "It matters enormously," I said. She hired me as a part-time bookkeeper at $13 an hour. It was the lowest salary I had earned since I was 19 years old. I accepted it without hesitation. That job was the crack in the door. I worked it like the most important job I had ever had because it was. I stayed late when no one asked me to. I found 3 accounting errors in the first month that saved the organization over $8,000. I learned every system they used, and then I learned the ones they were not using but should have been, Ruth noticed. Ruth started giving me more responsibility. Ruth started sending me to conferences in her place. 2 years in, I had my salary doubled in a full-time contract. 3 years in, I was managing their entire financial department. 5 years in, Ruth retired and left me a letter. In it, she said she had known from the first interview that I was innocent, not because she had any evidence, but because she had spent 40 years reading people. And she knew the difference between someone who had done wrong and someone who had been wronged. She said the letter was notarized and on file with her attorney. I kept that letter in the top drawer of every desk I ever sat behind after that. The work continued and the years moved. I started consulting on the side small businesses, church organizations, family nonprofits that could not afford a full accounting firm. I was good at it in a way that felt almost effortless by comparison to everything else I had survived. I understood money. I understood systems. And I understood what it felt like to have everything taken from you. Which meant I understood better than most why the numbers had to be right. By the time I was 58, I had incorporated my own consulting firm, Collins Financial Advisory. I named it after myself deliberately because I had spent too many years with my name attached to things I had not done. It was time for my name to be attached to something I had built. I had not spoken to Renee in 7 years. She found me first, through a mutual connection who had seen my company mentioned in a Nashville business journal. She sent an email, formal and careful, asking if I would be willing to meet. I read it 4 times. I wrote 3 different responses and deleted them all. Then I wrote a single sentence. I have never stopped being your mother. Tell me when and where. We met at a coffee shop on a Saturday morning. She was 31 years old. She looked like me around the eyes and like Raymond around the jaw, which was a complicated thing to look at across a small table. She had been told, she said, that when she was old enough to handle it, she would learn the full truth. Raymond had told her that at 15 and then never delivered on it. Claudette had kept the conversation carefully managed for years. But Renee had grown into a woman with her mother's stubbornness, and when she started pulling at the threads, they unraveled fast. She had found the original documents. She had hired her own investigator. She had spent 14 months and a significant amount of her own money building a case that confirmed what I had always known. She sat across from me and said, "I am so sorry. I have been trying to figure out how to say that for 2 years, and I still don't know how." I reached across and took her hand. "You were 12, I said. "You were a child, and the adults around you lied to you. That is not on you." She cried. I held on. We were not immediately repaired. I want to be honest about that because I think it is important. 19 years of distance is not erased over one coffee. We moved slowly and carefully, and there were hard conversations that had to be had more than once. But we moved forward. That is what mattered. What I did not know was that Renee was also beginning to reckon with her father's family in her own way, and that Claudette, who was now 71 and had spent decades enjoying the life she had carved out by destroying mine, had no idea that the ground was shifting under her. When I received the invitation to Renee's gala, I understood immediately what it was. Renee had told me privately that she was planning it, that she had invited Claudette and Raymond and several family members who had all believed the original story. She wanted them all in one room. She wanted to show them what she had built, and she wanted me there, not hidden, not in the back, but walking in the front door as her mother. The message at the bottom come, "If you dare," that was Renee being theatrical, which she had always been even as a child. It was meant to make me smile, and it did. I called my assistant and asked her to arrange the car for that evening. The gala was held at a hotel ballroom in downtown Nashville on the last Friday of October. It was a genuine event Renee's company had done well. She had 200 guests. There were flowers and string lights and a jazz quartet in the corner. I arrived 20 minutes after the start time, which was deliberate. I wanted the room to be full. The car was a black Mercedes Maybach. I had not rented a Rolls-Royce because that was not who I am. What I am is a woman who, when she walks into a room, does not need a car to make the statement. But the car helped. My assistant walked in ahead of me. I stepped through the door in a floor-length burgundy dress I had bought for exactly this occasion, and I paused in the entrance, the way you pause when you are not in a hurry and you never have been and you never will be. I watched Claudette see me. She was standing near the bar with a glass of white wine, laughing at something someone had said. Then she turned and found me in the entrance, and the laugh stopped the way a record stops when someone lifts the needle. Her face ran through 5 expressions in 3 seconds. I recognized all of them. Disbelief, recalculation, fear, a reaching for control she no longer had. Raymond was 2 feet from her. He saw her face change and turned to follow her gaze, and then he found me too. I walked into the room. Renee crossed the floor to meet me and took both my hands and said, loudly enough for the nearest tables to hear, "I'm so glad you're here. I want to introduce you to some people." She turned to the room and she said, "For those of you who don't know, this is my mother, Margaret Collins. She is the founder of Collins Financial Advisory, and the reason I understand what integrity in business actually looks like." The room applauded. I looked at Claudette over the applause. She had set her wine glass down on the nearest table, and she was very still. Renee had arranged everything carefully, which I should have expected from a daughter of mine. During the formal portion of the evening, she gave a speech about her company's founding values. She talked about resilience. She talked about what it costs to build something honest in a world that does not always reward honesty. And then, without drama, without performance, she said, 19 years ago, my mother was convicted of a crime she did not commit. The evidence that convicted her was fabricated. My mother served 26 months in prison for something she did not do. She came out with nothing and built everything you see represented in this room tonight because she is the woman who raised me. And that is what the women in our family do. You could have heard a pin drop. Renee then introduced her legal team, who had spent the past year and a half working with the state on a formal case for exoneration. The process, she explained, was underway. She did not accuse anyone by name that night. She did not have to. Every person in that room knew who she meant, and they were all looking at the same two people. Claudette left before the dessert course. I watched her go, and I felt something I had not expected to feel. Not triumph, not satisfaction, but a very deep and very quiet relief, like setting down something you have been carrying for so long. You forgot it was in your hands. Raymond stayed. I do not know why. Perhaps he thought there was something left to salvage. At the end of the evening, as the room was thinning, he approached me near the string lights along the far wall. "Margaret," he said. I looked at him for a moment. "Good night, Raymond," I said, and I turned back to my daughter. In the months that followed, the exoneration process moved steadily. Claudette's attorney reached out to Renee's legal team quietly, which told us everything we needed to know about how the evidence would hold. The formal exoneration was granted 11 months later. My record was cleared. The state issued a written finding that the original conviction had been based on fabricated evidence, and the fabrication was attributed to sources that matched a pattern consistent with Claudette's access and timeline. She was charged. She was 72 years old, and her attorney argued for leniency on the basis of age. The judge was not unmoved by the argument, but he was not unaware of the 26 months I had served either. Claudette received 3 years of supervised probation, mandatory restitution, and a public statement of responsibility that her attorney spent 6 weeks trying to water down and ultimately failed to water down enough. Raymond gave a deposition. He said he had not known about the fabrication, and the evidence supported that. Whether he had simply chosen not to look too hard, whether he had been willfully blind because it served him, that is something only he and whatever he believes in can settle between them. I stopped needing him to answer for it a long time ago. What I have now is this: a company that I built with my own hands, from a pull-out couch in my cousin's apartment. A reputation in this city that took 12 years to construct and is made of nothing but accurate numbers and kept promises. A daughter who calls me every Sunday, who brings her fiancé to my house for dinner, who laughs like me and argues like me, and will not let anyone in her life tell her what to believe without showing her the evidence. And a letter in the top drawer of my desk, notarized and on file with 2 attorneys now, written by a woman named Ruth who believed me before she had any reason to, except that she had spent 40 years learning to read people. Some people ask me what the best moment was. They expect me to say the gala, or the exoneration, or watching Claudette walk out of that ballroom with her wine glass still on someone else's table. But the best moment was a Sunday morning, 6 months after the gala, sitting at my kitchen table with Renee across from me. She was eating toast and reading something on her phone, and her hair was in a ponytail, and she looked exactly like she had looked at 8 years old, sitting in that same kitchen, in a different house, in a different city, in a different life. She looked up and caught me looking at her. "What?" she said. "Nothing," I said. "Just glad you're here." She went back to her phone. Outside the window, Nashville was doing what it always does on October mornings, going gold and unhurried, as if it has all the time in the world. I picked up my coffee and I thought, so do I.